Student wants to be an auto specialist. So we're working on getting them internships, apprenticeships with local garages that have great programs to develop them. I have kids making $20,000, $30,000 a year, working 20 or 30 hours a week right now, as they start getting those apprenticeships, internships, and paid part-time jobs towards that.
And so we have to stop this paradigm of, I'm the parent, I'm right, therefore you do what I say, because that's not building a vocabulary of needs. The child's not learning how to live in their age-appropriate space, how to go look forward into the world in an age-appropriate space, understanding that they're going to change and things are going to change, and that's where nonviolent communication comes in.
AI is an incredible tool. It's also terrifying, and we kind of believe we want our kids to understand that so they can use it the right way and be out in front on how to use it and develop it and help our culture.
The teacher said, well, we've been sending home notes with your daughter that we would like to meet with you, and the notes keep coming back, not signed, not acknowledged, and your daughter tells us that both you and your husband are illiterate farmers. Welcome to the Dr. Thornburg Wellness Podcast, where pediatrics meets functional medicine, blending science-backed insight, common sense, and a touch of shamanic wisdom from a father of 8. Hi, I'm Dr. Brian Thornburg, and on this week's podcast of You Asked, we have Chris Sparker. He is the Chief Executive Officer, Chief Learning Officer, and the co-founder of the Freedom Institute. This is an alternative educational program here in Naples, Florida, and I love learning, I love teaching, and so this is a natural extension to start to learn how we can teach our children, what choices we have in teaching our children, because how we fundamentally instruct our children will lead to how they perceive the world. So it's really important that we know what we're doing. We're not just accepting that, well, this is the way it's been done. And so we're going to open up the dialogue, and we're going to start to learn a lot about what choices we have in educating our children and why that matters. Well, welcome, Chris.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Doctor.
Yeah, well, you're welcome. I think this is going to be a great conversation. So tell me about the Freedom Institute and why it was created and how you came to decide that this was something that should be done.
Absolutely. I 3 years ago had the chance to open Freedom. A board had reached out to me on a vision of economic freedom through learning. Quest for Success had been the program that they had run previously in Naples for about 30 years, which was really a straight college application, college scholarship program. And our board wanted to open up to careers that didn't require college just as much as college. I had a past relationship as a principal with one of them and their children, where I served Collier County for about 25 years, 11 as a principal. But I homeschooled my own son, Noah. And when they pitched this idea at me about economic freedom, I said, how about you let me build a high school under the homeschool laws of Florida? And we talked through it and we made it real, and that's how Freedom was born.
Okay, so it's not a charter school. This is under the homeschooling banner.
No, we're actually a private nonprofit.
Okay.
Legally, we operate under the Personalized Educational Plan or homeschool laws of Florida. Governor DeSantis, a couple of years back with House Bill 1, passed legislation that allowed monies to follow parents, probably more free than any place in our country. Florida is really the leader for parent choice in education. And for Collier County residents, about $9,000 minimum, a little more than that, can follow students to their educational choice, including homeschool expenses, which covers most of our tuition.
And that just started a few years ago.
Yeah, we're 2.5 years old. We started coincidentally, not strategically, when he passed the law. So that was great for us.
So that's great. That was good timing.
For sure.
So I got just some background. So we homeschooled some of our children.
Mm-hmm.
We sent some of our children to public school, some to private school. They all went to public high school eventually. One of them homeschooled for high school because the high school experience wasn't for her. And now they're all moving on into college and doing different things. One's graduating college and plans to go to medical school. So I have a lot of experience in all these different, and we went to some charter schools too in that mix.
Okay.
So, and my aunt, my dad's sister, was president of the Florida PTA. So lots of educational experience in my family. So you mentioned that this was an extension of Quest for Success. My daughter that's heading off to medical school, she was in Quest for Success. And then they moved it over to Village School.
Yep.
And so that's no longer at Village School, or does that continue there? And
it still exists at Village School. Mrs. Umstein is still running the program there, just like she had in our building on Horseshoe. So yeah, it still exists.
Okay. And then, so I know the building that you're in because that's where Quest for Success was at. And so there was a thought coming from parents and educators. let's focus on economic freedom, because Quest for Success was really a cherry picking of the best high school students, well, theoretically, in the county, and from my experience, that tend to be. And they would help prep them for college and SATs, and then they would get into the best schools and apply for the scholarships that were available. So it was really a runway to get the best and the brightest in Collier County, the best step forward into a college education. But then they opened up the bandwidth to include non-college directed kids, people that were more interested in tech or just vocational. And explain that a bit more.
They wanted to open the door to young men and young women who could go straight into the workforce and be productive, successful Americans. One, as that's so important to our country, but also our culture is changing. And with our vision of economic freedom, our country and culture have made a $1 trillion mistake where we send everybody to college blindly. And they don't really know what they want to do. They haven't really tapped into their necessary skill set. Get them to college or make sure they don't drop out was kind of the high school goal. And we wanted to be way more specific and build a personalized plan for every student built on their strengths. We're not college prep, but we can get kids into the most elite universities. We're not straight into vocation, but we can get kids great paying jobs that they're built for, happy with, and will be very successful at. Under the homeschool laws, you can kind of build it to each individual student's strengths, which is what we take advantage of. We do live classes in civics, math, language arts, and science, just like a traditional high school. We do them in the regular and honors level, but a much smaller class size, a much more tailor-made approach. We make sure students are successful based on learning mastery, which isn't necessarily time sealed. If a student works really, really fast, they can actually advance faster. If they need some extra help, we can make sure they get those learning goals in their brains. We don't have to fail them, or we can build really on a continuous learning model, which is kind of how our country started before World War I, which we talked about earlier a little bit before, and how we changed to an assembly line warehouse model because of a war, not because that's what's best for learning. Right. We're kind of going back to the science that really is best for each learner. But we're a full-service high school under the homeschool laws.
A lot of people don't know how our current mainstream educational system came about. And so it was initially designed to support better soldiers, build better soldiers, build people, soldiers who knew how to follow directions, and teach them in a very efficient manner. That's why classrooms are set up with one instructor in the front. All the desks and chairs are all aligned like they're standing in military formation at the attention, and it's very a top-down approach, which of course is very positive for assembly line instruction, but it is not the proper approach for individualized learning styles.
It's efficient. It's a great babysitting service, so we can have moms and dads both working at the same time. It takes care of kids from 7 in the morning till 2 in the afternoon. But my goodness, it certainly doesn't take advantage of the different individual strengths that so many of our young people have, or help with their weaknesses better.
Right. And also, I homeschooled some of my kids, so I already knew this, but a lot of parents recognized during COVID when there were lockdowns how much time is wasted in school babysitting children when those are time opportunities that are lost where the child could outside playing, exploring. And so there's so little time that is actually used in instruction, and most of the time it's really just non-productive time.
Dr. Thornburg, you nailed it. My son Noah, in our homeschool environment, I still hit him as a counselor as we built Freedom, and his hardest high school day in homeschool was 2 or 3 hours. And he was on a very heavy math, science, tech curriculum as he wanted to be an engineer. He went to college, and he started in regular college, and he'll equate that was about a little easier than his homeschool 2 or 3 hours a day. He moved into honors, and it got to be about the same as his homeschool 2 or 3 hours a day. So it makes you wonder, what are we doing for 8 hours a day? And I get that we expose students to lots of different curriculums. There's socialization, but there's also a lot of efficiency lost. Just take the 7 or 8 block schedule on transitioning classes each day. Add the 4 minutes you've got bell to bell, plus the setup in class when you get there, the takedown and prep to leave. I mean, you're losing an hour or two just in transitions.
Right.
There's so many things that parents and entities like us that give that expert guidance can really do to be efficient. And you said it too and nailed it. You play for younger students. Our older students, taking their strengths and taking it to the next level. Extra training for athletics, jobs, internships, apprenticeships, enjoying the family, church, you don't need this 8 hours a day. Let's let them still be kids and have more adult exposure, not just kid on kid in these giant high schools, but adults in family and community work to help develop and groom them still while they're still around and we can help them.
Right. And that all very beneficial for the whole child development is because it's not real life to sit in a room with only people your age. The real world is a diversity of ages and backgrounds and interests. And by opening up potential times of the day where they don't have to sit in a classroom is beneficial to learn about the world and who's there. Because I know, being a pediatrician and having 8 kids of my own, is kids will play to their audience. And if all of my peers are in front of me, and I still do this at my age, if I meet up with my college fraternity brothers, I am acting very differently than I'm acting in another situation just because I have this peer-to-peer engagement, which isn't real world. And so giving appropriate real world modeling is very beneficial to help a child progress in an achieving way towards mastery to be part and contributing and productive in a society, as opposed to I'm just interested in my social network, so I'm going to let my grades or my athletics fade, because it's so important at that age to have social interactions. And they can get the social interactions in other ways.
And that's kind of one of the benefits that Freedom bringing the homeschool families or the homeschool concepts, where sometimes socialization, content teacher expertise, cooperative learning, projects, that's a part that homeschoolers can really be challenged to do. Plus, parents are in isolation, and sometimes the curriculum, the pathing gets pretty scary, especially in high school, where traditional schools do offer those. But they offer so much of that, you don't get enough of the adult modeling, the adult nurturing, the adult coaching. So Freedom kind of brings the best of both. We can do those great teachers in small classrooms, but that are very involved in the learning process, with the strengths and individualization that you can come from homeschool.
Right.
We tailor make every curriculum for every kid at Freedom, which is fantastic. If you want to be an architect and go to Florida State, we're calling their admissions office, asking about their architectural program. How do we get this young man or young woman who's a homeschooler in Florida under the Council of Freedom into your great university and possibly with scholarships? And they tell us. And then we build the curriculum, we build the high school pathing that way. Student wants to be an auto specialist. So we're working on getting them internships, apprenticeships with local garages that have great programs to develop them. I have kids making $20,000, $30,000 a year, working 20 or 30 hours a week right now, as they start getting those apprenticeships, internships, and paid part-time jobs towards that. We're also really advantageously looking at dual enrollment opportunities for our kids. There's some great universities locally that have incredible dual enrollment programs. It's free college for students while they're in high school. I'll have many students graduating from their home schools with 2 years of college done and paid for.
And that's a huge plus. In Florida, I don't know, you're the educator. I don't know how this applies in other states. But
we're the best state in the country, Dr. Thornburg.
Yeah, we are the
for
best
free
state.
college,
Yes.
And for parent choice in high school and college. Our leaders, DeSantis being the most recent, have just done an incredible job for us.
Really have. So before I get into more of what Freedom is offering and really contrasted against other mainstream high schools or charter schools, I want to look again a little bit more at that global. We just gave the historical perspective that our current educational system is really designed to instruct, not allow free-thinking individuals. It's just designed to be workers in the current context, previously to be soldiers in the previous context. So in Finland, you may know where I'm going with this. Finland has been the top performing country in industrialized Western society on academic standardized testing for many, many, many years, year after year after year. I don't think anybody's knocked them off the number one position. And I didn't look at the numbers right before I came in, but we're looking 10 plus years at least. And they outlawed all tests, no child under 18, or I guess any child, cannot take a test. You cannot implement a written or verbal test until they're older than 18 years old. Everything is project-based and everything is learning and play-based. And because of that approach, which is working more naturally with how a child is designed to engage with the world, they get a much better academic performance level. Is that something that did you know those statistics or?
So I had the good fortune when working for Collier County Public Schools to participate in the National Institute for School Leadership, or NISL. And NISL was in large part studying the best school systems in the world based on NAEP scores. So Finland, some of the other Northwestern European countries, as well as some of the really modern developed Asian countries, always dominate the NAEP tests versus the United States. And we actually, as a principal, a couple of times my school was selected to do pieces of NAEP testing. So interesting to see that. And then the NISL studies, well, what makes them better? And some of the play styles, project-based, a little less focus on tests, a little bit more focus on learning until we're developmentally ready for tests, makes a lot of sense. Freedom takes advantage of that. And our test philosophy and strategy is we have kids test if they have to test, but it's for the student, not for the school. Testing in the state is tough. It's a governance issue, and it comes from our leadership. You have to test. You have to get a school grade because they need an accountability measure for the school. It's not really for the kid. It's for the school. Now, you can say we want to make sure kids are at grade level equivalencies, but that's based on this same warehouse model you mentioned. The grade level equivalency was built to babysit. It wasn't necessarily built for the learner. And some of us learn and perform in way different ways that aren't a pen and paper or a computer test. It's out there in the environment or talking or social. And it really limits us to just this kind of academic little laser of test scores. Now, we do SAT, ACT test prep, CLT test prep, if kids need that score for their college goals. There's some testing that we have to do for certain state scholarships, but the state's very liberal on that, and they let parents kind of pick and we'll advise. But I'm with you. Testing matters if it matters for the individual. It shouldn't have to be done for the adults. It should be done for the individual person if that's what they need in their lives.
So am I understanding that at Freedom Institute, if the individualized learning plan for the child, it demonstrates that they're more of a project learner, then they don't take tests, they'll do projects, and then they'll take tests if that's more of their preference?
I'm looking at the big standardized tests. Mm-hmm. So if you want to go to college and it's a test required school, you're going to have that ACT or SAT test score. So we're going to help you magnify and get the best possible score you can. If you want to go straight into the workforce, and there is no required test for that career, we're going to put you more along a curriculum that teaches you how to do that career, whatever that might be, including those internships, apprenticeships. In our traditional core classes, our civics, math, language arts, there's a traditional rubric on a 100% scale, and we do give quizzes and tests towards it as we go. The continuous learning model, though, that we approach is if a kid has a bad day and wants to get some extra help and the score wasn't what they wanted, we bring them back in for one-on-one tutoring with their teacher and allow them to reassess. And we would do alternative testing, projects and whatnot too, if that fit their learning style and their ability to show what they know better.
That makes sense, because you want to give them the proper prerequisite to enter the field that they're interested in.
Absolutely.
Right. And I'm just going to do a little background. You know this. The benefit of project-based, which is the Finnish style and other kind of more Scandinavian style countries, is the child will learn their math, they'll learn their history, they'll learn the social studies in the project. And rather than being tested on those individual subjects, it's woven into a project designed to capture all those different areas of study. And the child now will then present their project along with their team to their school and to their parents. So the child is then motivated to not look like a dum-dum up doing the presentation for their final grade, because now it's like, you need to know how to sing this song, and if you can't sing this song, it's going to be very clear that you're the one up there not singing and everybody else is singing. So there's this kind of peer pressure into it all, as opposed to, well, I have a math test tomorrow, I didn't really study, and then I get a C. Very easy to kind of hide behind the academics and not perform. Whereas if you're held accountable in front of your peer group, in front of your parents, in front of the grandparents, and whatever extended family might be joining, you want to perform. And so there's a greater motivation to perform.
That's one of many benefits of project approaches and integrating different curriculums. I mean, for sure, the positive peer culture, you want to model, you want to do your part, you don't want to lose face. You're also developing critical thinking skills at a much higher rate when you're integrating different academics and you're doing it with peers. The other part, in our modern culture in the workforce, project and presentation is the jobs that await them. It's not simply taking a test in isolation. That job doesn't exist. And if you think about it, so many of the traditional tests we take for certain academic curriculums are things we'll never touch base again in our careers. So I'm completely with you on the project-based, Dr. Thornburg.
I mean, that's what always attracted me. Was it seemed so much because, as a physician, I work on a team. And so, when you go to medical school, when you start your clinicals, first 2 years are all didactic, so you're just learning tests, but you're studying with your friends. And then your third year, you go into clinicals, and you're the low man on the totem pole, and you have to follow your fourth year medical student, your intern, your resident, the fellow, and then you have the attending. And education is passed down, and they will start, with the medical student, see what they know, and then they'll move up to the next level. And so everything is designed at some point, understandable. The younger guy doesn't know what's going on, but then as we move up, there should be a demonstration of knowledge. And of course, you don't want to look like a dum-dum.
Yeah.
On rounds. I had that unfortunate case one time. I was on radiology round, so I was with all the surgeons. I was a third-year medical student. I was with all the surgeons, the radiologists, the pathologists. So there was a huge train of individuals, and I was the youngest member in the class. So the attending just focused on me, and I total red, sweat. I didn't know any of the answers, and so they had to go up the line. The next week, who's the youngest member here? I am. Oh, Dr. Thornburg, you brought honor and privilege to your family last week. Let's see how you do this week. So they have fun with it, and
sure.
But it was definitely you learn, and then you're motivated to do better. So now we kind of have a global perspective, historical perspective. We're seeing an evolution in options in education. And, here in Collier, we have charter schools, we have homeschooling, and we have traditional schools. And then I think also the vocational schools. So those are the four options.
And you got public and private.
Public and private, right,
Private
inside
too.
of the
Yep.
traditional main models. I know that some of the charter schools don't use electronics. Some of the charter schools, others are focused on electronics, but you can see there's a whole continuum of different academic styles. I know that Freedom Institute is doing something a little bit different, and where I'm going with this, I think.
So my board, being visionaries, after our first year, said, where is education going with artificial intelligence? And we want to do what's right for kids and be on the cutting edge of it. So a colleague and I started about a 1-year research project on where would AI be in education. Traveled the country, seminars in MIT, San Diego, Arizona State University. And we came up with basically a thesis that young people that know how to use artificial intelligence ethically and efficiently are going to probably outsource and take the jobs of those that don't. And so landed $1 million grant to integrate AI into our systems. I'm a believer in the personal relationship between teacher and student, that there needs to be an adult in their life that's guiding them through the academics. And then different learning styles kind of dictate how it works best. Is it a traditional stand and deliver teacher in the classroom guiding the instruction? Is it a computer-based module that puts them in productive struggle and adapts one-on-one to them individually, which artificial intelligence can do at incredible levels now, and it's only getting better? Or is it a self-paced course, kind of traditional modules that they can just take themselves through? We want to build to what that learner thrives on the best. And we always start with the live classes, get to know the student, let them to get to know our systems, let our staff kind of see those styles with parents, but then we could make adaptations. Nice thing about some of the AI classes and the computer-based classes are under the homeschool laws where you don't have compulsory attendance on site. If you're a family that travels, vacationing or work, if you're a athletic hopeful for, that you need to really focus hours of day through the 9-to-5 workday with coaches or nutritionists, some of these digital platforms can really be a nice augment to your educational path. So you can focus on some of those other more hands-on pieces. But I'm still a fan of the live classrooms. I think we need to integrate with our AI philosophies. We will teach kids different AI tools and how to use them ethically and efficiently. We'll have assignments sometimes, unlike a lot of schools, parents' permissions required. They have to use AI to do their project. You hear a lot of schools, they're cheating, they're using AI for everything, they're not developing critical thinking skills. We're kind of pushing back on that. Our educators need to be more savvy to build assignments, lessons, and teaching modalities that require the critical thinking development. Some classical pieces where, technology away, paper and pencil, here's what we're going to do, go. But then sometimes use the technology and teach them how to use it right. And that's one of the things I think we really dropped the ball. We get afraid of new tools and new technology, AI being the latest and greatest. So we ban it and say it's bad. Then we deal with fighting the regulation and the rule of it with student use or our colleagues' use. All of a sudden, the individual gets cut free from those structures. They don't know how to use it right, and then they get into trouble. AI is an incredible tool. It's also terrifying. And we kind of believe we want our kids to understand that so they can use it the right way and be out in front on how to use it and develop it and help our culture. The other part is we're a very patriotic school, Freedom. And we really see the United States must lead the AI revolution. Heaven forbid a more nefarious country or culture gets out in front of it, and then we're in trouble. So we need our young people to really understand it. So that's kind of where we go.
Yeah,
with AI,
because that's the big concern. Is obviously you think AI cheating. Oh my gosh, they don't know how to do geometry because they just took a picture of the problem and then they just wrote down what the AI generated. Again, I'm just going to self-reference here. In medicine, I can't possibly know everything, but I know enough to go how to find proper information and ask the right questions. And so that, I think, would be translating the approach is what you would try to teach is like, okay, can't know everything, but there's tools available to you, but you need to have at least a core foundational understanding to be able to ask the right question.
Absolutely. Dr. Thornburg, we take our kids, year one kids in our core classes, each of our teachers once a month in their content need to have an AI lesson. So it could be in our history one. So this lesson, the teacher may have used Conmigo or something to help them develop the lesson, and they simply explain to the students how they used it for their own purpose. Or they may say, okay, guys, take out a paragraph. You can use the internet, but no AI. Give me 2 resources and talk about your favorite president and why. Then the following day, okay, you've got your draft from yesterday that you wrote kind of, traditionally. Now today, same thing, go into AI. We're going to use Perplexity and then Gamma for a presentation. Do the same thing, 2 sources. Now give me your favorite president AI. Now I'll compare and contrast the 2 models. How did it come out different? So we're actually teaching them the critical thinking skills to do it traditionally, but also with AI, and then compare to continue to develop those critical thinking pieces with this new tool set that's going to be such a part of their lives in all likelihood, depending on which career they path. It's going to be hard to move forward after high school in a career that AI might not help you be better at your career with.
Correct.
We also get them certifications. Year 2 students at Freedom will get certified in at least 2 different AI tools or methods. This year's class, they're getting certified in Google Essentials and Google Prompting. So they'll actually have industry certifications in AI. So not just that we're teaching them how to use it in a traditional high school method, they're actually getting industry certifications to use the tools right and to tell employers or colleges, I'm certified in these already.
Fantastic. What AI, there's open AI, there's Grok, there's Claw. So how do you, in an academic setting, because I don't understand the philosophy. I know that they're large language models, and how you program your large language model will determine the biases, because everything is built on language. And just I open this with how we educate our children will control how they perceive the world. The same thing with the large language models is how do we input the language modeling, because that will drive the conclusions or the material that the AI presents.
Yeah, so full transparency, Dr. Poteet is my director of artificial intelligence, and he's my expert. So he kind of is behind the scenes as we choose different tools and pick the right ones for kids. As a high school piece and with the homeschool, there are some models that are closed where you're using the AI, but it's not using you. Most of them are open, and open source is a neat thing, you think free, but the other part about open source is when I ask that AI something, it's remembering and tracking what I asked it and who I am and my IP. So we teach the kids the digital footprint pieces too. Be very cautious when you go in and inquire and start using the AI. because it's tracking everything that you do, unless it's one of those closed models. So depending on the tool we're using at the time or teaching, we try to share that with the kids. This is the way this model works. This is the way this one works. We pick and choose a lot of different tools. A project in our AI2 class, our year 2 class recently we did, the kids had a project to pick out something in the year 2050 that you're interested in. Tennis shoes, a basketball, a car, a microwave oven, whatever it is. And we had taught them to use these AI tools. They first had to start with Perplexity and find 3 sources about that item and what it would be like in 2050, where Perplexity is an LLM that really just focuses on more research and fact-based content. It doesn't go into social media and opinion. And they had to check the sources and make sure that they were accurate. They then had to dump that into ChatGPT to build them an outline from what they submitted. They then had to look at it and make sure that the sites were still referenced correctly and it was still built right. They then had to take that and dump it into Gamma to create a 5-slide deck. And it gave you 3 or 4 different ones, Google Docs, or you could have went PowerPoint, whatever. So they then had to look at that project, edit, make sure it was correct. They then had to practice their verbal presentation off that deck back into ChatGPT verbally to give them feedback on their presentation. Once they had done all 4 steps and were ready, they presented it to our staff. And Dr. Thornburg, I got to tell you, I did it too because I co-taught that lesson. It took me 2 hours with some subscription and technical snafus to create an incredible presentation on how pickup trucks will be different than 2050. And I reflected back on my own career when I've had to do a presentation of that magnitude. It was days. And our kids did it just as well or better than I did in less time than that. So to not use the tool and jump in, so long as they understand some of the cautions and how these different tools work on them back, it's going to set them up to move forward with an efficiency that our current generation just can't do. But we got to be careful that they're still kids. We got to protect them, that it's not eroding their ability to think and problem solve. I heard a futurist at an AI conference long ago talk about medicine. And so I'll throw this question at you before I give you the answer. It said, if you have a need for brain surgery and you could have the world's foremost neurosurgeon go in and take care of you, or the world's most incredible AI and robotics go in and take care of you, who do you pick?
I would pick AI.
Okay.
The reason, because I mean, I don't know if I saw a documentary where the AI can make 50,000 microsecond decisions, and obviously it can enter with less invasion than needing to do with like a Da Vinci that's in a specific situation like that. I think the more technical you are, I think the better you would be. However, in primary, I don't think a robot or an AI can replace. So I think you have to make a distinguishment between very technical procedures and keep maintaining the human element in there. So I don't know how this futurist.
His answer, he cheated. It was both.
It was both.
He said, you want the surgeon running the show.
Yes.
But the AI assisting in every capacity, up to including the actual technical cutting and fixing.
Yeah.
But you want the surgeon running the show and having a plan that they built together. The surgeon goes in. Said one of the big scary things about AI is once you go in, if there's something unforeseen, that the expert doctor probably would be able to handle it better than the AI. Mm-hmm. But together, they're even a more formidable team.
Yeah, that makes sense. And that was what, radiology was what they thought was going to be the first on the chopping blocks with AI, because AI can scan and see everything on an image better than a human could. But what we found is that the radiologist still needs to be there to control the AI, just because, and I'm not a radiologist and I don't know where the failures came in, but it wasn't possible to replace humans with AI on radiology reasons. And that actually, the specialty of radiology is exploding, and that was just the opposite that everybody thought was going to happen.
Huh. So AI is making the whole part of medicine and radiology way better.
Yes.
But you need human beings even more now to take advantage of these assets.
Yes.
I think that's going to be kind of the way it goes across the board in so many professions. Education being one too. There's some incredible AI curriculums. I shouldn't say there's some incredible curriculums that are using AI for the teaching, they can put the learner right where they need to be in a content and leave them in productive struggle and set them up for one-on-one success. It's really hard to do when you're a teacher in a classroom of 15, 20, 25 students. With the AI, it's a one-on-one. But it's still this square, sterile box. It's not the smile or the stern look to inspire or motivate. It's not reading the individual yet to see how they're thriving and to go ahead and compliment them, or that they need a break or need some extra help. Those are pieces that you still got to have that human being and that teacher, as well as what we do, the teacher that's curating the entire curriculum, the entire course load for the student towards that bigger path.
And that was always, when we look at sci-fi, there was always, like in Star Trek, Data was never fully comprehending the nuances of human emotion. Certainly could do and know, and Mr. Spock similarly, could do and know much more than the human could, but they were never human. They never were able to put their finger on the pulse, literally, of what makes us tick.
I love the sci-fi metaphor, and what better day than May the 4th be with you, right?
Right,
so
right.
We went Star Trek, a little bit better metaphor for what we're talking about. Yeah.
So let's, for parents, because this goes to people all over the country. So, we're fortunate we're in Florida. We have opportunities here. Tell me, are there other programs that are kind of on the front edge of education in Florida, elsewhere in the country?
So if you wanted your child to have the freedom to learn to their strengths, you'd want to move to Florida. If you wanted your child to go to college and have it paid for, you'd want to move to Florida. We really are the best state in the country for that. And Forbes and some other journals look at return on investment and different options. We're number one for parent choice. We're number one for free college. And great colleges. Some of our state universities now are elite and have the highest academic standards and the same par as our military academies and Ivy Leagues. So there's that. I'm a big fan of homeschool. The freedom that you can pick your curriculum for your own child, and nobody knows the child better than parents. Nobody loves the child more than parents. If you can dedicate the time and resources to doing it, as great as a teacher in a school can be, we still can't duplicate what a family can do. And then with hybrid programs like Freedom popping up, we can take some of the expertise of educators and college and career pathing and blend that with that family's love and demand for incredible educational opportunities for their kid and really make something special, which is what we're doing. Arizona, Indiana, Texas is up and coming. There's some other great states out there that are moving that way. It is a national battle. The movements for parent choice and that their tax dollars can dictate where their kids go, be it public or private or homeschool, are really gaining footholds across our country. It's been a red and blue argument piece for a long time. It's now actually shifting to where it's just becoming a best practice. And both sides of the political are starting to adopt it.
On the Trump's plan to dissolve the Department of Education, I heard about it early in his term. I haven't heard much about that. I know this is a separate topic, but it certainly plays in because they, again, you would be able to speak to this much more than I am. National standards, we have to educate this way. You only get state money for your public schools if you follow our where is that? How does that fit into all of this?
I mean, big picture, I'm a fan. The Constitution was built, education was a state's right. And I like the competitive marketplace. And if all of our states are kind of creating best practice educational pathways for students, and then this state's fantastic, and then this state's struggling, we're seeing different pieces. When you're governed by one central entity, and pretty much the way the DOE works, this is oversimplified, but here the federal government has these millions of dollars to give to the state if the state does it their way. And you're so hungry for monies to come help your programs, you end up abiding, and we just sort of become the same size fits all again, that warehouse school model. So breaking down the DOE and pushing the money back down to the states, I think is a great step. Big fan of the big, beautiful bill, and that you're going to have educational funding for every student individually, which is going to be pretty cool too, to help families out even more. So there's pieces of the DOE, I suppose, that I would worry about, having been a public educator for most of my life.
Which high school were you principal at, or was it a high school?
I was at Lake Park Elementary and Naples Park Elementary at the end of my career as a principal, but worked in almost every school in our district in different roles through about 25-year career. And Collier County Public Schools is one of the best public school districts in our country. We're privileged and honored to be a successful school in a school district with so many successful schools. We're not just here because it's not working elsewhere. We're here to give folks another choice. They may work best for their kids. But boy, it's great to be in Collier County because you got great choices.
Right. No, very good. Another question, and this is getting more down to the practical family level. So we homeschooled, and I have 8 children. We have 8 children, and the first 4 were homeschooled. We loved it. It was they homeschooled through 4th grade. We went up to Cape Canaveral, watched a rocket ship take off. We did the homeschooling program at Cape Canaveral. We would go on different, there's a lot of homeschooling options in the state of Florida, and we would take advantage of all these. Mom was stay at home. Then when we had the twins, and then we had the 7, and then we had 8, it was no longer realistic to meet the needs of the homeschooling children, have the same freedom to go do these really cool homeschooling out-of-home projects or experiences. And obviously, when you have little kids, and a lot of them, they take priority. So how does that then we moved into charter schools, and then eventually we moved on to public schools. And how would a family navigate both parents out of the house versus mom stays at home with a homeschooling experience? Because that's similar to what most people aren't having 8 kids, but there comes a point where there's just not enough time. That's the common thread, is there comes a time that there's just not enough time in the day because mom's working, or there's too many kids, or I have some stay-at-home dads. I don't want to just say moms are staying at home. How do they find enough time to continue homeschooling?
So 2 suggestions I'd have there. One situation that's way better now than when you were homeschooling your students or I was homeschooling my son is there now is state funding to support it. So House Bill 1 passed 3 years ago. For Collier County families, it basically, through the Step Up PEP program, can pay about $9,200 per student for homeschool expenses. So when you and I did it, we were kind of figuring out how to pay for this out of pocket.
Right.
Now, if you're spending $9,200 in travel, curriculum, resources that you need for your homeschool environment, you can now get that back from the state. So, 8 kids, $9,000 a pop, all of a sudden, a full-time stay-at-home parent to manage all of this as the teacher starts making sense.
So the parent can pocket that money.
So long as they have receipts and invoices. They can't pay themselves for time.
Right.
But they can pay themselves for curriculum. If you went to Cape Canaveral, within limits, that travel as an educational expense can be reimbursed.
Okay.
So there's a lot of opportunities now for families to handle that. Tuitions like programs like mine are also paid that way. So families didn't have that before. And that leads to part 2. Because of this, there are so many hybrid, co-op, homeschool support programs like Freedom opening up for families from pre-K on through high school. So there's a lot of folks out there now that are offering the expert educational curriculum pathways, but flexible schedules, parents still in charge, transparent curriculums. We do it as a team, but we handle up to as much of all of it if you want us to. But you're still getting that concierge approach of what's going on.
And that's a great segue. The children in my practice, the teenagers that have been homeschooling, are top-level athletes. We had the number 2 seed tennis player for his age group, who now is out in California playing in college. So they were homeschooled. And in concierge medicine, which I will argue all day long is much better than volume-based insurance medicine, because you get to know the family and you're directly responsible to the family. Concierge medicine started with professional athletes in Portland, and then it moved to C-level suite executives, to the Hollywood elite, and now concierge medicine has trickled all the way down to pediatrics. We were probably the last of the specialties to engage in concierge medicine. So the 2 areas that people hold very tight, your healthcare and my family, maybe money is the third one, the people hold on to that very tight. And so I think what you're describing is an earlier, this is an early representation of what medicine has already gone through, but it's happening in education, where, it was the elite high school athlete was being homeschooled. I mean, there were definitely homeschoolers that were happening, And I always told homeschooler parents is as long as you're social, your child will be social. Because I have seen some homeschool kids whose parents only homeschool because they're terrified of the world, and then their children are terrified of the world. And we had one of those kids in my college where he literally walked down the hallway with his back up against the wall. Instead of the middle of the hallway, he would walk with his back to the wall and then slide around doors, almost like he was one of those little automatic vacuum cleaners that go around and just find the edges. And so people can really have to be aware of why they're homeschooling, because you can certainly destroy your child's ability to function practically in the world if you're not doing it for the right reasons. And so get back to what I was saying is the high school elite athlete kind of charged the way to the hybrids and the homeschooling, and now we're starting to see, what you're doing.
Well, and that role still exists. I have several athletes that come to Freedom just for that purpose. They need to be with a strength training coach a day a week. They need to be with their sport elite coach a day a week. And it just doesn't work at some of those elite levels when you're bound to a 7 to 2:30 high school Monday through Friday with compulsory attendance. You can build your flex schedule through the homeschool curriculums and have the time to really focus on that. And I've got pre-Olympic swimmers, many kids that will be Division I and getting big scholarships competing that. It also is very popular in performing arts. So, for folks that have interest in dance or theater or music, same thing. They need those Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 hours sometimes to pursue that goal and that career potential. So they need a more flexible academic, which we can provide.
Now, how about discipline? How would that work at your program versus
Yeah, so I'm a behavior analyst, a board certified behavior analyst too, and really believe that positive affirmation and positive reinforcement should set your school's culture and build upon that. Freedom has foundational character expectations of respect, hard work, kindness, and patriotism. We're a very red, white, and blue American school. And you go to Freedom, you're going to come out loving your country. That's a piece. But we are optional for students in that a student has to want to be at Freedom. So you could make your children come to me. Your son or daughter would have to say, I want to be at Freedom. I want to be an Eagle. I understand that you're going to expect me to be kind, hardworking, respectful, and patriotic, and that I'm pledging to pursue my personal best for you guys, myself, and my family. So they have to want to be there. Even if a parent says you tell them you want to be there, or we're not going to feed you tonight, once the school year starts, if they come to me or the principal and say, hey, listen, this just really isn't working out for me, we'll bring the parents in and say, we need to get an exit plan for your son or daughter because it's just not right for them. That changes my culture quite a bit because everybody wants to be there. In our big warehouse high schools with compulsory education, it's not their fault, but you've got a lot of students that are forced to be there that don't want to be. And those big warehouse models really aren't made to tweak the environment to that learner's strengths where we are. We're also customer service. I tell my kids, I expect you to be having fun and enjoying your education. Learning should be a fun thing. And if we can build that through the last 4 years of high school, they'll leave as an intrinsic learner that wants to learn the rest of their lives. If we drill and kill them with hours and hours of homework and the word rigor overused, they'll never want to open a book or deal with a math or science problem again. So we approach it a different way. We modify the environment to really take care of the learners and make it an enjoyable experience for all. So I think that's one way that our culture is quite a bit different. That's really a superior piece.
You're choosing to be there. You're
Absolutely.
Full-on participatory.
Absolutely.
And it's not mandated. It's not required. It's by choice.
So then, even a child that loves school, when they're going to one of the big warehouse models, there's kids in their classrooms and kids in their hallways that don't want to be there, and they make it miserable for everybody. We don't have that.
Right. So I've written letters to the board on this, and there's no immediate solution, the school board on this. And that is the chronic sleep deprivation of teenagers. We know how important sleep is. If there's any single thing outside of eating that we can do, exercise, sleeping, and eating are probably the three core legs to the stool that keep us healthy. Kids stay up late, and then my kids are up at 5:15 to 5:45. The bus comes at 6:05. When they can drive, they have to leave, by 6:20 to get to school. So they're chronically sleep deprived. What is the plan at your program to help with that?
So with the high schoolers needing that sleep, that growth, we don't start our core academics till 8. Even though our school's open at 7, it's optional attendance based on what the parent wants, so they don't have to show up till 8 if they have a class. They wouldn't have to take an 8 o'clock class if that was too hard. I mean, we have 8, 9:15, and 10:30 start times for our academic classes. We're also very flexible and could go computer based. If they're working late, have that kind of a schedule, we can build their curriculum totally flexible around them. So we try to be as flexible as we can with that. The flip side is for families, I would say, even though we are a school that uses AI and technology for a lot of learning opportunities, shut down all screens, at 9 o'clock. No phones, no computers, off. And this is your expertise more than mine, but that blue light and what we're learning more and more that it does to us, especially late at night, it messes up our entire sleep patterns.
Yes.
So shut it down.
Shut it down, 100%. Yeah, that's good advice for everybody. Now, some of the students are just computer-based?
If they choose to be.
Okay. Now, I'm trying to address people that are watching.
Sure.
They're in Miami. They like your program. They don't have an equivalent program in Miami. Can they just do computer-based from Miami? And
They can. We have Freedom Anywhere, where you can take advantage of our coach. So your child would have one of our coaches assigned. If it's distance outside of Collier and Lee counties, we're really then are kind of forming into college prep. I can from distance help you get into college and get you scholarships and dual enrollment. I probably can't get you a job down the street at a welding shop.
Right.
So Freedom Anywhere is a little bit more college prep unless you're local. But yeah, we can build the full curriculum, the full coaching model, and take care of you anywhere.
how many of the children end up at your door because they were academic problems, or behavioral problems at other schools? And then do you seem to be a depository for that? And if so, how many of those kids then turn around because now we're working with them instead of them being a circle pegged being pushed through a square hole?
Yeah. I would say behavior problems and academic problems very low. And when I've gotten students that had that reputation or stigma, more often than not, the vast majority of the time, it wasn't the student, it was the learning environment versus their strengths. They weren't fitting in to that train track approach that we have, where you've got to sit in a desk and be told how to learn, or open a computer and teach yourself. It just wasn't the way they were built. I would say more often than not, what I had was actually very intelligent students that were going home and saying, this is a waste of my time. I've already learned the materials. I'm doing homework all night. I don't want this course. This isn't what I want to do. The kids around me are making me very uncomfortable, emotionally or physically. My relationship with the faculty, it's not there. It's not existing, or I don't like it. It's a bad mix. And then they and their families strategize and research what are their other options. I'm probably a little bit more students that need the flexible schedules for the athletics, for the work, for a more well-rounded life through high school that come to us. A lot for college prep too. They see the concierge model as a real advantage to getting into the universities that they're seeking, and to getting the scholarships that they want. So that's probably a big niche too. I do have a lot of families though, and I'm jumping into your area, so I want to be careful, but they'll come to Freedom and they'll say, since being at Freedom, my son or daughter's been able to come off of ADHD meds or anti-anxiety meds because the issues that they were having in their academic setting previously have gone away since they've come to you.
That makes sense.
And that really gets to my heart. That's what we're about. We want to model the learning environment for the learner instead of forcing the learner to fit into a one-size environment.
Right. If we look at ADHD, again, going off topic a little bit, but ADHD is an endpoint of a whole series of issues that came before it. Certainly there could be a cognitive, educational issue, but there could also be some environmental influences that also affect and then take a child off their potential. Mm-hmm. They're too stressful, too much noise. They don't like the peer setting. They don't have very little sleep, and they're getting up early, so they're just not fully engaged because they're tired chronically. There's a lot of different reasons, and that's one of the things I always explore with my families before we put them on ADHD meds is, are we doing everything that we possibly can and everything that is reasonable for your family to do? Because I've certainly had parents say, that's great, but this is how we eat. We're Southern. It's our Southern culture. We're multi-generational Southern family, and this is just how we're going to eat. I'm like, thank you. At least now we are defining what plan you guys need but you're now, instead of me making you feel uncomfortable for not eating a certain way, you've said, we're not going to go there, which is all we're looking for, is just open communication.
Excellent.
So we both can work with each other in a way that's respectful. So how about if somebody's not in Collier and they're in Miami, just explore the nuts and bolts of this, can they take that $9,100 and apply it out to a school that's not in their county?
They can. It's a homeschool expense, so it isn't restricted by county borders. You would have to have a Florida address. And you would only be eligible for the funds that your county is eligible for. So different counties have different cost factors.
Okay.
Don't quote me on this, but I think it's based on real estate taxes and values. So Collier is one of the highest at $9,200. I want to say the state average is about $8,000 for high school.
All right. And then what would be the delta if they had $8,000 to hand you guys? What would be the delta for them?
Yeah, we're $12,500 for an annual tuition. It's a $500 registration fee and then $1,200 a month for 10 months. And we bill the first of the month that they attend. Because we do see ourselves as new and innovative and flexible, we don't require a year's commitment. So if a family jumps into Freedom August, September, and it's just not for them, no harm, no foul. You only owe us for the month you started. So,
same way I do my concierge practice.
Yeah.
If I'm not delivering what I say I'm going to deliver and you're not happy, you shouldn't be here.
that's the way we see it, and it works out. I mean, I think it inspires my team to really serve our kids and our families at a higher level. But two, we're new and innovative, and we don't want people to be trapped. The reality is nobody leaves once they come to Freedom.
And I have one more question, and this goes to what I see as a pediatrician as a failure. I mean, my interest, once you learn how to treat ear infections and pneumonias and UTIs, that's what you learn in medical school in your first few years out. And then you really get to what's happening underneath that. Why are these kids getting these problems? What can we do to change the family culture, the trajectory of the family, so the children are productive, communicative, and socialized? Because those are the three, in my opinion, the three most important endpoints for a parent to deliver their child at 18 so they can go forward in the world. But there's not a lot in mainstream schools. There's not a lot of, this is nutrition. This is why we want to avoid seed oils. This is why red meat is so much better than pork, chicken, or fish if again, it meets your cultural, religious needs. Vegetable protein, the least like us and the least nutritious. So is there anything in this program that's addressing these areas which are hugely important to understand to go forward in life? And if not, can I be the medical trainer?
Maybe so, because we certainly do not have a nutritional curriculum in our C5. We call our C5 our core, which is the language, arts, math, science, and civics. With our economic freedom through learning, we do 4 years of consumerism, teaching kids personal banking, stock market investment, venture capital, how it all works. So they really graduate high school knowing about money and debt in ways that we didn't. We dive into career class, which might be where we could have a little bit of overlap. And I am going to invite you to come talk to my kids. In career class, we bring in folks from the community monthly to speak to our kids about their careers and their paths.
Yeah.
So it helps them kind of determine and discern, is that something I want to do or not want to do? And that might be a place where we could bridge a little bit more into health and nutrition. If a student has an interest in a medical career or a training career, nutritionist career, we will pull from about 30,000 different licensed Coursera courses, modern states and whatnot, and build classes that tie into that. We won't teach those live. We kind of stay right on our core because we're really an elite concierge, intimate high school with 4 teachers, 1 in each of the 4 content areas. But I'd love to work and develop something. We do enrichments on Friday. And year 1, we did have a cooking class. So I might have bridged a little bit there, but I'd like to get
it would be
more
nutrition, just to throw it out there. I mean, because obviously nutrition's people, they don't know how to read the back of a cereal box and know, it's enriched flour. Well, code, this has no nutritional value, but enriched sounds great, know. So the other is interpersonal communication. I'll have the 4-year-old that the parents are frustrated. Again, we're outside, but I think it's the reason I'm going here is when I teach parents that they're like, why don't they teach this in school? And the parents are now first passing it and they're brought to the table because their 4-year-old refuses to eat, isn't going to bed, typical 4-year-old toddler kind of home family issues. And we will review nonviolent communication, where if a parent is insisting that their child do something, then the child, because they don't have other influences, and they say, oh, this is how mom and dad handle it. They make me do things when they want me to do something. So now the parents have role modeled to the child. Well, now the child's like, oh, so that's how we behave. If I want somebody to do what I want, because this is the only imprinting that I've had, then I'm going to make my parents now do what I want. And so the 4-year-old that's misbehaving is actually the parent staring back at the parent, right? And so we have to stop this paradigm of, I'm the parent, I'm right, therefore you do what I say, because that's not building a vocabulary of needs. The child's not learning how to live in their age-appropriate space, how to go look forward into the world in an age-appropriate space, understanding that they're going to change and things are going to change. And that's where nonviolent communication comes in. And every time I teach this to a parent, and unfortunately, it's not often enough, like, this should have been taught to me in high school. And so that's another area besides nutrition, is just how to have appropriate dialogues.
So I would say Freedom handles that in about 3 different ways. One, if you come to Freedom, you're going to have a success coach and you're on their caseload. So we have certified Florida teachers and a language arts, math, science, and civics lead. They also then have a caseload of 30 kids, almost like an elite concierge vocational counselor. You know, our warehouse high schools, a school counselor may have 500 kids and a lot of duties beyond just the students and their career. So you've got them every day working with you for 4 years and working with your family. So you have this coach that's grooming you and helping you and teaching you, targeting your career, but kind of doing a lot of those things that adults do better with kids than kid on kid. As we said before, when you're in that big model, most of your minutes are spent with same age peers that don't know anything any better or any more than you do. So you're learning from someone that doesn't know anything more than you. Where here you have that adult. Part 2, our classes are built, and I mentioned fun earlier, and having been both elementary and secondary in my career as an educator, I kind of picked up that in secondary education, you get teachers that love the content. I love science, and I'm going to teach science, and I'm going to tell you how great it is and how wonderful it is and give you the content. But man, I love it so much. I think everybody should love it. So yeah, I'm going to give it, standing on the mountain and delivering, and take it or leave it. If you take it, you're smart, and I helped you. If you're not, that's on you. So the content expertise is great to develop learning to a high level, but it's not necessarily that interpersonal relationship with your student that you're teaching. In elementary, you get teachers that love student development. They take that kid on for a year and they're theirs. And over that year, they get to see that young person learn to read or get number sense or start to compare and contrast essays. And from day 1 in August to the last day in May, this kid grew amazing. And it was thanks to me as a teacher. And they take ownership and accountability of that growth. So at Freedom, I've tried to blend the best of both worlds. So in our live classes, it's content expertise, it's fantastic curriculums, but it's chunked and delivered with the teacher still having responsibility for that child's development for the year. And in some cases, 4 years when you look at their specific coach. So through that, you get a lot of grooming, a lot of communication skills. The chunked elementary model, instead of just a 47-minute lecture, it's, okay, guys, here's my opening hook lesson. Teacher may present for 10 minutes. Now, talk to your partner about what we just learned and what you think about it, and then be ready to present your synopsis of it after 5 minutes. Now jump in and read this. Now get with a group of kids and decide how you're going to present this argument. Now we're going to have a Socratic debate about it. So we're constantly forcing them to interact with the learning and then give back.
Sure.
And that's really the way learning should be, K through college, in my opinion. There's some technical, okay, I'm going to be an engineer. I've got to understand the equations. I've got to dive into this. Sure. But that communication, project, and teacher-led instruction or computer-led instruction that still builds those same capacities is really what we do. The last part of that is in our career class, kids have to develop resumes and college application skills. We take them through mock interviews or annually. So we get to see, we coach them, teach them how to do an interview, take them through the process, give them feedback, and then do that over 4 years. And man, the way they start an interview as freshmen and the way they end as seniors is extraordinary.
I bet.
But they need us as grownups to give them those communication skills.
Yeah, and those interviews will also work for college admissions, not
Absolutely.
just for jobs. Yeah, yeah, that's great. And just learn how to speak with an adult. And that's one of the, I can always tell a homeschooled kid, they're always much more comfortable in their skin again.
The meta-analysis of homeschoolers in college specific, in general, universities prefer homeschool graduates because they're more mature, they're more eloquent in their communication, and in average, they test higher. And it's because there's been more adult grooming and support through their upbringing and education.
I'm going to share a story, and then we can finish on that. So, as I said, we homeschooled our kids for the first one through fourth grade. So the one that's graduating college now and is going to go on to medical school, first time in school was fourth grade, and there's some standardized testing within the first week or two of school, and she'd never seen a Scantron sheet. She'd never taken a standardized test before. And again, we have 8 kids in 10 years. So she takes the test, then finally my wife gets a phone call that says, "Can you come and meet with us?" She's like, "Sure." And we just had another child. So she's flowing, postpartum kind of robes, nothing. And she goes in. I don't know, maybe she had a baby on her lap or something. But the teachers, with a master teacher, because the fourth grade teacher was a younger teacher, so there's a master teacher. And they start the communication with, "Do you think it was a good idea to put your child in homeschool?" And wife's like, "Well, I think it was a really good decision for our family." Then there were some more probing questions, kind of judgmental questions like that. And so finally, my wife said, "Well, what are you guys trying to get at here? Because I can clearly see that there's an agenda and you don't think it was good that I homeschooled. What are you trying to get?" And they pulled out the Scantron sheet. And there were flowers doodled all over the Scantron sheet. So she wasn't fitting, the mold. And the teacher said, "Well, we've been sending home notes with your daughter that we would like to meet with you. And the notes keep coming back, not signed, not acknowledged. And your daughter tells us that both you and your husband are illiterate farmers." And at this point, my wife says, "Oh, I'm clued into what's going on now. You've been outsmarted by a fourth grader. I am a physician. My husband is a physician. We're qualified to teach in medical school. So I think that we're certainly qualified to teach first through fourth grade if I can be a professor at a medical school. So you have been taken for a ride by a fourth grader." And then the whole dialogue changed. But that is classic homeschooling character.
There's a stigma with homeschooling, and I think it's being dismissed now as our culture evolves and parent choice starts taking over, and we see the benefits for so many learners of going that route. But as a principal myself, we'd get a family in from homeschool, and this was typical, I think, in public ed. The ones that came back, not always, like your case was different, but a lot of times they were failed experiments, right?
Right.
And the child wasn't behaving. They weren't learning. The parents weren't equipped to do it, and didn't find or get the resources to help them. So we'd get kids back that were academically and behaviorally behind the standards that we expected at the grade level. I'm not a big fan of that either, because I think we all learn just in different ways on different days sometimes. So that was the public ed stigma. The reality is most homeschoolers never come back to traditional schools because they thrive and are super successful. I would invite families with a homeschool interest, call us, because we're happy to help and guide anyone. But look into the Florida Parent Educational Association conference annually in Orlando. FPEA is the biggest grassroots homeschool group in our country, and they hold an incredible homeschool convention every year over Memorial Day. Typically, it's at the Gaylord Palm, so it's a great family vacation if you can get there. And it's breakout sessions about the laws and curriculums. It's a huge convention center with different vendors selling and offering support. So you can go get onboarded professional development as a homeschool parent. You can shop and learn about curriculums, and it's a great experience for kids and families. They actually offer a prom dinner on the Saturday night and a graduation walking across the stage, which, those are a couple of the big challenges with homeschool. You tend to be isolated. You miss out on some of those incredible school culture pieces, and they offer a little gap for that. But that's another thing. Schools like Freedom, we just had our first prom. We do social nights with kids. We really build some of those great traditional school spirit pieces into the homeschooler's life.
I like all that. That is one of the shortcomings. And kids want to be social and they want to have those experiences because it's kind of a rite of passage.
And sports, and Dr. Thornburg, that's another big one that I want to get out there. A lot of families think, well, I played football, I played basketball, I was a soccer player, I want that for my child. So how is that going to happen in homeschool? In Florida, the laws allow homeschool students to try out and make all high school teams.
In your zone district?
It's even now out of zone. You can try out and make an out of zone. You want to talk to the athletic directors and coaches. There are some local challenges. Collier's fantastic. support system for athletics and homeschool. Lee County is a little more challenging. And even some private schools are open to homeschool athletes for athletic fees. So
I have I guess one more question after my last question. So I have parents in California, West Virginia, Mississippi, New York, where parents have to homeschool because they don't want to vaccinate their children. I don't want to get into the vaccine discussion, but that's the only avenue they have because they can't send their children to daycare. They can't send their children to any type of school without being fully vaccinated for age. So a lot of people will homeschool their children to loophole out of the mandates to vaccinate their children. Can individuals from out of state use a program like yours?
absolutely. We're for Freedom Anywhere, we would be an online curriculum to people anywhere. You're just paying us our tuition. You're still under the homeschool laws and governance of your home states. So what curriculum you use, and I'm not fluent on all of our states, so we may want to help a family from California if they're reaching out to us. Hopefully they're still running the show, so they'd have to understand their homeschool laws and rules. But I can't imagine a scenario where they can't pick their curriculum. And in this case, we could pick it for them and help them on that college pathing.
And you're K through 12 or what?
We are high school only.
High school only.
We will look at middle schoolers case to case if they're ready for high school curriculum.
Okay,
And if they're on site, that they're mature and can function in a high school environment.
great. This has been really informative, educational, and I think we delivered a lot of good information
Yeah,
for
and thanks.
people to hear.
I'm getting some stuff back from you too.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
and we're very similar in our mindsets on how we look at
Yeah.
education and kids. So
Yeah,
that was
well,
refreshing.
good. Well, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Dr.
All right.
Thornburg. It was great.
All right.
Appreciate
All
it.
right. Thank you for joining us on the Dr. Thornburg Wellness Podcast. Come for the science and common sense. Stay because it works.